Hello, everyone, and welcome to eTech Facebook Live Fridays. I'm Tech Bob, and today I'm going to be reviewing some common repair tips related to Samsung repairs. These are things that we find help the repair process overall, prevents damage, and just overall wasted time of having to put parts on and take parts off. So, to get things started, I'm going to begin with the screen replacement. So right here in front of me, I have a couple things. I'm going to move them out of the way. I have a couple phones, some tools, which I'll get to here shortly. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is screen replacement. So I have two different types of screens here. I have one with frame and one without frame. Now there's benefits to using each one. If you do the without frame, you don't have to have all these different color options in stock. But you do have to worry about frame damage on the original frame, because if the original frame is damaged and you put that new screen on there, there's a chance you're either going to crack the screen or cause some other kind of damage. Now, on the other side, this screen with frame is great for not having to actually pull the broken screen off. So this is a Note 8 right here. Pull the broken screen off and risk damaging other components. Now, the thing with pulling the screen off as well, if you've done Samsung repair, I'm sure you've seen this. It's very hard to get the screen off of the frame without damaging the actual display panel or the OLED. And if you damage that panel and it wasn't damaged before, now there's no buyback value to that. So if you are repairing a phone that has a good OLED to it, where there's no cracks in the actual display portion or lines or any type of discoloration, I would recommend using the with frame option. That way you can send that screen for buyback, and on average, Samsung screens have higher value when it comes to buybacks, especially the newer models. So that was basically first tip with screen replacement. You can use either option here. Now, as far as the screen goes, another item that I recommend is if you're using the screen without frame, adhesive is always a question we get from our customers. What kind of adhesive should I use to do different things? When it comes to Samsung screen repair, what we recommend is using the pre-cut adhesive that looks like this. It has the same elasticity and tack factor, I guess, a stickiness as the OEM, and it allows for the best spacing. You can try to use Tessa or Red Tape or even E8000, B7000. The problem is it doesn't have the same thickness as what this is right here, so you may end up with either a screen that's sitting up a little bit off the frame or sunken in. If you want the closest to original look and feel, you want to use this here. Now, before you apply adhesive like this, another tip we like to give out is make sure you clean your frame properly. An item that we see happen whenever you put a screen like this on a frame is if you don't clean all the shards of glass from the original display off, it's very easy to crack the new display. And when it comes to Samsung screens, as I mentioned before, they are a little costly just because of the panel that's in them. Samsung's always been on the pricier side because they've used OLED for a very long time, so you don't want to damage that new screen. Another tip here when it comes to screen replacement, I have my phone right here. Before I go fully, say I'm going with the option of doing with frame, I'm going to move everything over, or not everything over. I'm going to move at least my board and my battery over first, because what I want to do is test my new screen to make sure it's one, going to fix the issue the customer brought the phone in for. We have seen before where customers bring in a phone saying, oh, I cracked my screen, there's no image, I just need a screen replacement. You put a new screen on there, guess what? Still no image. So replacing the screen is not going to fix it. And you don't want to find that out when you're at the end of the repair and realize, oh, I got to take this part back off. So you want to test as early on as you can. Now, when it comes to this screen right here, the one without frame, testing is even more important, because if you glue this screen onto the original frame and haven't tested the screen yet and then realize, oh, there's a defect, if you pull that screen off and damage it, unfortunately, when there's damage present on the screen, we cannot accept it as an RMA because we can't send it back to our factory as an RMA. So definitely test the screen prior to fully installing it. And as far as doing that, I'll show it here in a second once I get to that point on the phone, but it's just as simple as connecting some cables. So before I get into connecting that screen, I'm going to jump over to another tip here, and this one is related to the screws. So if you've repaired the S20 and newer, I think the S20 Ultra or S21 Ultra, if I'm not mistaken, the screws you may find are a little bit more snug in there, and that's because of a couple things. One is it seems like they really tighten them in there, and two, the amount of Loctite they use, or that like blue coating, it's like basically screw glue, holds that screw in there very well. So two tips I offer there. One, use the right screwdriver. So oftentimes technicians will use the same screwdriver they use for iPhone repair. So your PH000 Phillips for the Samsung screws, which it will grab them, but the problem is it's not the exact size. What you actually want to use is PH00. So it's just one step up as far as size for Phillips, but this will give you your best grab when removing the screws and will help prevent stripping, because that's the issue you run into with especially the newer ones is you'll strip the screw, and there's been some where we've gotten them from customers where we've had to basically Dremel a line in the screw to be able to grab it with a flathead, or even Dremel the head off the screw completely if it gets that bad. So to avoid that, again, use a PH00 Phillips screwdriver. Another thing you can use, so these bottles right here are great for applying isopropyl alcohol in a controlled manner. So what you can do is apply a little bit to the screw head. What that'll do is soak in to where that screw is and help neutralize slightly the Loctite. And alcohol in general is good for anything adhesive related that you're removing. So drop a couple droplets on there, and that should help in releasing the screw. So I'm gonna take out these couple Phillips screws real quick, just so I can get to the next layer of my phone. And the screwdriver that I'm using in particular right here is the Wiha PH00. Wiha makes great stuff. They're a German-based company. I think I've had some Wihas for about at least 8 years now, if not closer to 10, and they're still working the same as when I got them that time ago. So definitely recommend Wiha as far as quality goes. So finishing up that last screw right now. And here's another one. So this one really wasn't planned as a tip, but if your screw doesn't come out of the frame like that, you can leave it in there because it'll come out sort of as a tray with the plastic piece. So I'm going to pry off the plastic piece right here. So that's my top piece with my wireless charging layer. And I'll pull off my speaker here at the bottom. You notice I'm using my hands. It's really up to technician preference or skill. You'll realize as you go along, you'll start to use your fingernail as a pry tool, or a built-in pry tool. A spudger is the go-to, so if I didn't have a fingernail to lift that up with, I would use a spudger to pry that off carefully. You want to avoid using metal because metal can easily knock something off a board, and it can also short things out. So what I'm going to do here, I have all my cables connected. I'm going to unplug my battery first. Again, that one really wasn't a planned tip, but definitely recommend with any device repair, unplug your battery first. And now to test my screen, I'm going to unplug the sensor flex cable, which is for the S Pen, and then my display cable. Now, if you're dealing with a Note series phone, you're typically going to have two flex cables. Samsung's made them into the digitizer layers independent of each other, so one is for the S Pen, the other is going to be for your just standard display. So again, to test this, I'm going to plug in my sensor flex cable. And then I'm going to plug in my display flex cable. There we go. And I don't recall if this one has power to it, so we'll test it out just to see. I'm going to plug my battery back in, make sure my cables are properly connected. And then this power flex, I believe, works with contact points. Actually, no, this one's plugged in right here. On some Samsung boards, the PowerFlex will actually work with a contact point under the board. So you might have to put a little bit of pressure down on the board so it makes contact. This one, we shouldn't need that. We'll hold the power button for a couple seconds, and if this one has some battery in it, it should turn on. Which again, this one I believe might be dead. Yeah, looks like this one is dead, but this is one of our tester phones. I just pull as an example for today. So basically for testing process, we would turn the phone on, make sure the touchscreen works properly, and at this point, again, you're not fully invested with this screen, so you can unplug it easily and either return it if it's defective, or if you don't need it, again, you can return it as well. But the important note here is that you're not damaging the screen in any way during this process. So again, very important tip, test your screen before full install. I'm going to unplug my battery. I'm going to unplug my screen. both cables and put that off to the side. Now, when it comes to Samsung repairs, getting into the phone is another big thing that some technicians have issues with. So I'm going to talk about the back glass removal now. Every phone after the Galaxy S6, I believe, is going to have a back glass. And what we've noticed is some phones are harder than others to remove the back glass on. This right here is, I believe, a Note 10 Plus. Yes, this is a Note 10 Plus. So tips for removing the back glass. Whenever you're dealing with glass and adhesive, the number one thing that as technicians we've always kind of gravitated towards is heat. So I have a heating pad right here. That would be step one. So you would turn your heating pad on, and this is the mini version. You don't need the large one for doing Samsung since it's small. We recommend setting it to 75 degrees Celsius. That's kind of been our magic number for iPads, for removing back glass on Samsungs, for opening iPhone screens. It's just hot enough to help with neutralizing the adhesive, but not too hot to where it's going to damage your display or any of the internal components. So what I'm going to do is put the phone on the heating pad. While that's going, I'm going to briefly talk about a couple other items we use to remove the back glass. Here's our alcohol bottle again. We have some guitar picks here. And then this right here is a blade holder with a flat X-Acto blade. This is our preferred tool for removing back glass on iPhones after using a laser, but it's also great for getting that initial insertion point. Now, the reason why I say initial insertion point is you're not going to use this all the way around the back glass for two reasons. One, it's metal, so it's not going to bend when it comes to the glass. It's going to crack the glass if you're too rough with it. So you definitely don't want to use this too much. And the second thing is, because it is metal and this is just very light paint, it's very easy to scratch that, and you don't want to do that either. For some models, it's very easy to fill in some scratches with nail polish. Has been a good option for filling in any scratched paint. Don't recommend Sharpies usually because it's not the same black and it's kind of clear and also doesn't look good. But you can fill in if you do scratch it. But when it comes to a phone like this, it's just like the rainbow back. It's really hard to fill that in without the customer noticing. So if you do scratch it, you're typically going to have to replace the back glass. Now to get started, what we recommend is taking again, your insertion point tool. So this could be a really thin Isesmo, a metal pry tool, or in this case, it's going to be this blade opener. Now, this isn't going to be the exact look and feel as when you're opening one that hasn't been opened, because this is our tester. Again, it's been opened before. But two things. We already had it on the heating pad. We do like to coat the pry tool a little bit with some alcohol. That helps kind of ease it into the back glass. And then once you get that initial insertion point, you can do the same thing with the guitar pick, just a couple drops of alcohol, and then start transitioning over to your guitar pick or your plastic tool. Another tool that's great for this repair, or this part of the repair, is going to be a playing card because of its thickness, as well as for those of you that have Metro cards or in areas with Metro cards, that really thin plastic card can be used for removing the back glass too. And when it comes to this process, it's all about taking your time. You want to mix the alcohol and the heat, and you want to basically swap them out. So as this starts to cool, you'll notice that it gets harder to pry the back glass off. So what you're going to want to do, you can leave the guitar pick in there. I definitely don't recommend taking it out because then it's going to stick back down if you don't watch it. I'm going to take the phone, put it back on the heating pad, and just repeat that until I might work my way all the way around. Now, another caution point when opening the phone, this one doesn't have a flex cable to it. Just let me check the inside because I don't recall. Yeah, this one does not, but some models will have your fingerprint sensor or your heart rate sensor in the back. If it does, there's going to be a flex cable that goes from the glass to the board where it's plugged in. Use caution around this area right here, because if you forget that cable is there, there's a chance that you'll tear it. And definitely don't want anyone tearing that flex cable. The good thing is you can replace it without losing any functionality. It's not like Face ID or Touch ID on the iPhone, so good there, but you definitely want to avoid it. So again, go around the edges, just taking your time, making sure that you're not cracking it or scratching the glass. And this one, we've had some of our technicians that have done hundreds, if not a couple thousand Samsungs by now. You may have a day where you just crack a back glass. So we do recommend having a couple of these in inventory just as backups in the event that does happen, because it's bound to happen at some point. But if you do follow using heat, using alcohol, using a guitar pick, and then even the heat gun is good for central or a localized heat if you want to just heat on a certain area. Just word of caution, you don't want to use heat in one spot for too long because it can cause damage to the back glass. The paint can peel, or you can damage components on the inside. Let's see, I think I'm running a little over on time, so the last two I'm going to talk about briefly is battery and charging port replacement. So I'm going to switch back to my Note 8 since it's all the way open. Battery replacement, best tip here is, again, for removal. Everyone should know what happens when you puncture a battery. You don't want that to happen, so alcohol is your best friend. Again, you just drop it around the edges with this bottle. What that's going to do is soak into the adhesive under the battery and help neutralize it. And then you definitely want to use some type of plastic tool. A spudger is good to kind of get on the edges. Now again, this one's been removed before, so it's going to come out easier, but you'll have the adhesive here around the edges. You don't have to put a whole lot of alcohol in because it's just trying to go in maybe half an inch, if that, to neutralize that adhesive. But once you get that out, battery should be good to go. Again, you want to avoid puncture. Now, I mentioned testing parts prior to full install on the screen side. You can definitely do the same thing with the battery. Just a little bit different. What you do is fold the flex cable out of the way, plug the new battery in, test the phone. If it looks like that fixed the issue, you're good to go. You can proceed with removing the old battery, because batteries, same thing goes with the Samsung screens. They can become damaged when removing them, and we definitely don't advise putting a battery back into a phone once it's been removed, at least removed with adhesive, because it just warping it, even if you don't puncture it, there's a chance that it can be compromised, and you don't want to put that back into a phone. And then our last tip, just to wrap things up here, is going to be related to your charging port. Big thing there is just making sure you're identifying prior to jumping into the phone what type it has. The S10 in particular has a soldered on charging port, so you need micro soldering skill to be able to do that. This Note 8 has a flex cable. When it comes to the flex cable version, the biggest tip here is check your model number before you open the phone. This one in particular is the US version, or SM-N950U. You don't want to try putting a international port in there. You're probably not ordering that on purpose, but if you don't check it prior to putting it in there, you might have issues where either it doesn't fit physically, service issues pop up, or it doesn't charge the phone. I've even seen some where it causes a boot loop, so you want to avoid all that stuff. Make sure you have the right charging port model. And then I said last tip, this is still related to charging port, but clean the charging port. A lot of the charging issues we see are related to just having stuff shoved in that port, lint, dirt, debris. Use compressed air. Compressor does the same thing, or a brush and alcohol, and that'll clean it up. But as far as the Samsung repair tips, that's all I had for today. I hope everyone found these useful and can use them in their repairs. I did have one final announcement before I finish up the stream today. We will be attending the Gadget Repair Expo in Atlanta coming up in April. I'm going to clear this up a little bit, see if I can get this overlay to work. There we go. See if you can read all that there. So, where is it? It's in Atlanta, Georgia. When? It's April 6th to 7th. Not next month, sorry. Jumping ahead of myself. A couple months from now. And if you'd like to register, go to GadgetRepairExpo.com. We will be exhibiting there and possibly speaking as well. We're going to basically put together whatever tips you guys want to see as far as repairs go. We don't have the exact speaking point just yet, but hoping to wrap that up soon, and we'll announce it in future streams. So thanks everyone for joining today. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and we'll catch everyone on our next Friday's stream. Have a great weekend.